Hello everyone and welcome to another tier list. And today we're going over Mordor as it has been requested. And oh my god, there is so much. So much. So many units. Look how many units there are here. There's... oh god. It took so long to go through all of this and actually get all the information I needed. But we're here and I've split them up into swordsmen. Or specifically things that do slash damage, specialist damage, pierce damage, cavalry, unknown, I guess I'm going to put these guys here, monsters, and siege. So, let's begin with the Orc Warriors. What are they? They're free, they're pretty good, they do decent for being a free unit. Their cost reduction is... well, the fact they're free makes them really good, but the reduction you can get for their recruitment is also really good from not sort of leveling up the barracks, but also from the defensive banner. And if I'm not mistaken, with both of these things added up, just give me a second. With the barracks, if a barracks reaches level 3, that's 30% speed decrease and an extra 25%. So that's 55% off of what is normally 35 seconds. And yeah, they're not going to win any prizes and actually beating anyone. I'd say the only things they would beat are other orcs that are lower level. But because they're free and they're decent for their ability to be spammed endlessly, they get B tier. They're not C tier because they're not trash. Well, I say no, they don't get C tier even though they are trash. But again, the main thing is that they're free. So you can focus your economy upon, well, building up your economy. Then the Morgul warriors are a different story altogether. Because these orcs, firstly you require an outpost to get them, which costs 2,500. However, above that, they have twice the health of orc warriors. They have heavy armor at base. That's right. These orcs, who are also free by the way, have classified themselves as having heavy armor. So chop damage, not going to do any more damage than slash. Pierce damage is reduced. They're actually really good at holding the line. They're an amazingly tough unit. And with Call the Horde, you can very quickly replenish your losses. And if you, even just one Morgul barracks, making these guys is really good. Plus, they're fearless. Now, I don't remember the proper terminology between fear and stun, but I'm fairly certain most effects in the Edain Mod can be classified as fear. So things like Cloudbreak, Galadriel with her infinite bullshit, Sauron with his even his own fear won't work on these orcs. They are fearless, and again they're tough as nails for a unit that is free. I'm putting them at A tier. I get really good results from this unit whenever I use it. However, the Dol Guldur orcs, they're a little bit on the weak side, sadly. These orcs. They're, again, a unit you can only recruit from an outpost. They are free. However, their stats are basically exactly the same as the basic orc warriors. They don't do any extra damage, they don't have any extra health. They don't move faster, they don't attack faster. But the only thing they have going for them is the fact that they do extra poison damage. So against certain factions, that poison will tick away and eventually kill someone. The only problem is, though, they don't have heavy armor. They're not fearless. But you can get both of those things from another unit that comes from the outpost. So these Dol Guldur orcs, I'm putting them at... I would put them at C tier. No, I'm gonna put them at C tier. They're good. They're decent. But for a melee infantry unit, you want to be having something that can push out an enemy. So your damage dealers, your cavalry, your archers, your monsters, which Mordor has a lot of, by the way, as we'll get into shortly. You want your infantry to hold the line and spamming them out quite effectively from multiple locations. Double the health and massive armor which makes most other damages obsolete. These are good. Dog with Door Orcs. If these were the basic Orcs, they'd be A tier, but they're not, so they fall down quite a few pegs for a unit that has to have a very expensive building to get. Now, these Easterlings, now we have two different Easterlings here, the Easterling Pikemen and the Easterling Halberdiers. And these Halberdiers actually don't wield their weapons as polearms, so they're not good at crush deceleration or revenge damage. They're actually a slash damage unit, which actually really surprised me. But they can also crouch in together and really sustain themselves. They're one of the two units you get, as I said, like the Easterlings here, that can come from the reinforcements from Rune, which is your tier 2 left side power. I will quickly show that in here. Unfortunately, I didn't get enough PowerPoint to show this off and show off the some other things. So reinforcements from Rune I didn't get to show, or Harad. I'm sorry, but and also no Grond, sadly. But back to here, these Easterlings are also A tier because again, like the Morgul Orcs, they can hold the line. They're not fearless, but if you use the Influence of Sauron, which I did mention in the previous video, if you use the Influence of Sauron on a defensive banner, they then come with heavy armor and forged blades. So that then they become even more effective at dealing damage and actually outshine the Morgul warriors. But again, these are in a way finite because you need to actually use a power to get them. Yes, you can reduce this time on the power, but it is still a thing you have to keep using over and over again, where the Morgul Orcs, you can spam them to no end, and they'll probably outshine the Easterlings, but only just. Only just. These Easterlings, though, they do as much damage as they can take. And speaking of, the Black Uruks. Oh, this unit. I love this unit. And you want to know why? Well, firstly, it does technically have a sword, so it is in the Swordman category, but it doesn't do slash damage. This is the first different type of damage other than the slash, specialist, pierce, etc, etc. We have Uruk damage. You may think, oh, all Uruks have Uruk damage. Wrong. These Uruks have Uruk damage because Uruk damage goes through heavy armor. So, if these Black Orcs were going up against these Morgul Orcs, it'd be the same as fighting these Orc warriors. This is such a strong unit. And they have a 0 command points. There are so few units in this game that actually have 0 command points. You can get them for free. Yes, they cost a bit, but their health is astronomical for a unit you can get from a settlement. They have massive damage output at 95, so any Orc, 2 hits, dead. An Orc with heavy armor, 2 hits, dead. And that's not a joke because they actually take 150% damage from Uruk damage. So, yeah, even Morgul Orcs have trouble. And in fact, these Black Uruks shine the best in the late game because that's when Uruk damage does more damage when units have heavy armor. Obviously, some units just get heavy armor by base, like the Morgul Orcs. But again, those that do have heavy armor should definitely fear this unit. And although they are capped at 3, you can get them reliably from a settlement as well. And again, 0 command points. Having a unit that costs no resources is good, but no command points is a rarity. And not just that, but because of their overwhelming power, they get S tier. I always get the Black Uruks these days. I always strive to get Black Uruks and their counterpart, the Archers, but we'll go into them later. Next, the Castellans of Dol Guldur. As the name suggests, they're from Dol Guldur, so you need to actually have the same barracks, the same outpost as the Orcs. And the Castellans, let's go over their ability. Let's go over what exactly they can do. So we have the Castellans here. They have 2 abilities. One at level 1, called Dread Visitation. If enemy units walk on drained ground, they become poisoned. So that's the same poison as the basic Orcs, except anything that walks in here, it then gets poisoned. So it's a mini blight. And then you can also give them extra armor and damage for 20 seconds. So this unit does incredible damage. It does nearly 3 times as much damage as the Black Aurochs, and I was just shining their praises a minute ago. But also they can then become immune to any kind of damage, which they're actually weak to. Elemental damage, poison, magic damage. They're probably the biggest things that can kill a Castellan, because otherwise they just don't die. And they also have AoE damage. They're one of the few units in the game that actually have AoE damage. I don't know why, they also have the Lich King helmet, but let's not go over that. Again though, you do need the outpost, and they are quite expensive, and you're also limited to 3. So, they are really good. They are not as expensive as the Black Aurochs. They're twice as expensive as the Black Aurochs, which is good. To say they do nearly 3 times as much. But you have to get them from an outpost. And quite a few maps, well, at least into the early game, you don't want to be going for Dol Guldur. You want to be going for Minas Morgul because of the better orcs. But they're still really good. I'm going to put them at A tier. Castellan's really strong. But the main thing you need to worry about are throwing them up against enemy heroes, because then they will just die. Pull them against elite enemy infantry and watch them just disappear, because that's how strong these Castellans can be. Next we have the Black Easterlings, a unit that you can only recruit through Camul. So I'm going through all units here. Every single unit that Mordor can recruit from a power, from a hero, from any building. Because I just want to make sure we get everything out here. Because these Black Easterlings, they're another thing that requires Dol Guldur, because you need to have Camul. But also, these guys do massive damage to buildings. Oh, my photos went, sorry. Black Easterlings, fat health, more health than the... In fact, no, same health as Castellans of Dol Guldur. Same unit size as Castellans. Do the same amount of damage as Castellans. But you only need the Camul to get them. And this power to get them comes back quite quickly. They are limited to 3 as well. They do have quite a high command point limit. But they're also really good. And again, that's another A tier unit. There's going to be a lot of A tier units for Mordor, because I love a lot of Mordor's roster. But yeah, Black Easterlings, really strong. Very good against enemy building, and it saves me from having to build siege. Is why I love them. Again, this is more of a thing for me. Just saying that I like this unit more because of this and this and this. You guys might have a different opinion on some things. But this is my personal opinion on these units. And in my playstyle. But there are some units I want to give more of a chance to. And here we go. Here, the Morgul Shadow. I love this guy. The way you get them, you're required to have the Nazgul use a Morgul blade on an enemy infantry, not cavalry, only infantry. They'll turn into a white shade, which, if you have the Influence of Sauron on Minas Morgul, again, this is why I love Minas Morgul. If you use Influence of Sauron on Minas Morgul, you can then turn these guys, those Barrow Whites, into Wretched Wraiths, which are basically in the visage of Nazgul. They have more health than all of these units that have currently been listed. And when they take damage, they heal the Nazgul. That's insane. There's been no other unit in history that when it dies, it heals another unit. I love these guys so much. I actually once, back in 2018, got an entire army of Morgul Shadows. And oh, I love them. I love them so much. They're really dependable as well. Again, massive health, and they do hero damage. They're not resistant. Things like trolls, their slash damage resistance doesn't matter. Their hero damage cuts through it. Grond even just cuts through it. Everything here, these guys can just cut through all the time because they do hero damage. And I love them. They definitely deserve the S tier. Their only weakness, I'd say, is that you can't get you can't get enough of them. There's always a problem where you have to always have Morgul blades stabbing everyone, to get them. That's the only way you can get them. But if you get a lot of them, your Nazgul will never die, and your Nazgul never dying mean your opponent will die, and it's so good. All right, so that's all the infantry. You can see, I love a lot of this. I love spamming orc infantry. I love their elite tier infantry. But we come to the pikemen now. Orc pikemen. Basically the same stats as the orc warriors, except they do specialist damage. So obviously they're good against cavalry. They don't take flank damage, which is good, because it means that cavalry charging into them, no matter where they are, they're going to die. The only problem is, though, they do so little revenge damage. And I only ever get this unit if I'm fighting a faction like Rohan. Otherwise, the Mordor clump is enough. Sadly, this unit just goes into C tier. It's a good unit, don't get me wrong. It's pretty cost effective. It's 50 less than a normal pikeman unit, but it is also about half the strength of an ordinary pike unit. It doesn't quite fit the bill in my opinion. The Mordor pikemen, though, the Morgul pikemen, from Minas Morgul, giving them fearless makes them oh so bolder. They are definitely better, but only because of the fact they've got heavy armor. The only problem is they're still weak to other melee infantry. But that fearless and heavy armor does put them a cut above the ordinary pikemen, just because they can hold out longer. The main thing with pikemen is they're meant to hold out against a cavalry charge. These orcs will die in an opposing cavalry charge just because they don't have enough health. And that's the same problem with the Dol Guldur pikemen as well. However, they can do a decent amount of damage to cavalry. Their poison goes through any resistances. Obviously, massive health bars don't mean anything to poison. And that's why I particularly don't like the poison mechanic in its current form. But they're not completely garbage. If you build Dol Guldur, you're going to be getting Castellans, you're going to be getting Black Easterlings. These Morgul pikemen aren't useless. They're not useless. Now, these Orc Halberdiers, I would put them at S tier just because they are the pikemen you need in Mordor. They're incredibly resistant. They do massive damage back to anything that comes near them. Even enemy infantry struggles against this kind of pikeman. And they're also classed as having heavy armor. So chop damage, nope. Only Orc damage, and Orc damage is actually quite rare. The only problem is, though, you are required now to have the influence of Sauron to get this unit. And, yeah, because of that, they only hit A tier. But again, they're restricted also to 3. But to be fair, you only really need, 3 units of pikemen against most factions, unless they're spamming cavalry like Rohan. If you're going against Rohan, you're just going to need pikemen. There's no denying that. But every other faction in the game, you don't need pikemen. Not really. Not a large amount. Only a few to cut down the odd monster or cut an enemy cavalry unit in half. Because then the orc clump, if they can't get out the orc, if they charge into an orc clump, they're stuck in there. They can't escape unless they have like 0 deceleration, which is very difficult to get in units. And even if they do, they're not going to trample everything, and those orcs are going to hit back hard because orcs have a lot of different ways to buff themselves. So yeah, that is that. Now the Easterling pikemen, they're also quite good, but similar to the halberdiers, you're required to use a power to get them. And yeah, they hold out well. The only problem is, though, as Mordor, you don't need that many pikemen. The halberdiers just are a cut above just because of their innate resistance to other slash targets. The pikemen are good, don't get me wrong. They are very good. I'm going to say this a lot. They are very good. However, you have a very finite amount of them you can get because it's from a power. And your strengths just come from cutting everyone else down before they get the chance to build up. And if your opponent is spamming like hordes of cavalry, then yes, the pikemen are going to make a bigger difference. But how often are you going to be fighting a large clump of cavalry? One in 100, in my experience. 1 in 100 is the chances you will be fighting in large hordes like that. Okay, so that is the pikemen. Quite a notch down, but the archers will bring it back. Orc archers. Again, I haven't actually said this, but all these orc units, except for the halberdiers, all these orcs are in hordes of 20. They're the only units in the game. Well, all orcs are the only units in the game that come in hordes of 20. So having 20 arrows shooting at something is actually really good. Their numbers their weakness is obviously going to be that they're orcs, but if you can keep them safe, then they can do some substantial damage. They've got the same range as Gondor archers, so that's really good. And they can get fire arrows, which is one of the few upgrades you can actually get as Mordor. And with that fire damage, they can cut through nearly everything like a knife through hot butter. They get the B tier. They get the proud B tier because I do use these every now and again, and they are good. They are really good. But of course, they're also cheap and expendable, so don't expect much from them in the late game. The Morgul archers are what you want in the late game because of their heavy armor, their fearlessness, so they're not going to be running around in stupid places because of a fear effect, or they're not going to be stunned in place because of a fear effect. It would take very few ways to keep this kind of orc unit in place, and you can very easily protect them again by the orc clump. Just kill everything in the orc clump ball of death, and oh, it's beautiful. So many times I've used the orc clump of death and it works. Now, Dol Guldur archers, despite their other two units being slightly weaker because their poison only works when they get into melee, and it's only a very small thing, Dol Guldur archers in the early game are a good substitute for the orc archers just because they have that extra damage. They actually have a ranged attack, so their poison is more effective. They can't run away from most foes, no, because they are slow. They're not. The whole point is, while these guys are shooting, your melee infantry is holding the line. Like, so Morgul archers and Dol Guldur archers together are actually a terrifying combo. And I've faced against it quite a few times as well. Because their poison just keeps tipping away at your health, while these Morgul orcs just keep holding the line against your Gondor soldiers, your Rohan peasants with draft, your dwarves, your elves, everything. These guys in the early game are an absolute menace. The pikemen and the infantry aren't scary at all because they can get their attacks easily interrupted, and they need to be in melee range to make it work. They never last long enough for their poison to take effect. These guys though, they're a threat to everyone. And now we have the Black Orc archers, which actually have a very interesting ability. And you've probably seen them all yourself as well, actually. With these Black Orc archers, they have something called the barbed arrows. They shoot red arrows, and when they hit something, they turn red. What that means is they're dealing less damage by 25%. That's absolutely insane. And this used to be the unit you had to get the influence of Sauron to get. They changed it into the halberdiers because the halberdiers are actually really good. But yeah, Black Orc archers. Back in the day, I never got to use these because I could never get the Kirithingal Barracks influence because everything else was more important. But nowadays, Black Orc archers, protected by the clump of orcs, like it's the perfect recipe. It works every time. You use your influence of Sauron to get you some cool stuff like your upgrades for economy, so you can get these archers more readily. You use Eye of Sauron, Overseers. Your orcs do like a bajillion damage now. and they can actually survive 1 or 2 extra hits because these Black Orcs are just doing little pings, and those pings matter as well. Their pings hurt after a while. Starts off small, but unlike poison, it doesn't kill them slowly. It makes them kill everything else slower, which makes these Black Orc archers so good. You should always get these Black Orc archers, at least one unit, just to hit everyone once, then move on to the next one, move on to the next guy, move on to the next guy, move on to the next guy. And they're all doing 25% less damage. It's incredible. These guys win wars, and it's beautiful. Now we come to the, I guess, cavalry for you, because they do cavalry damage, but they are technically an infantry unit, because they don't do trample damage. Spiderlings. 300 cost base, so the same as Orc Archers. With the influence of Sauron on Dol Guldur, they do become free. They do cavalry damage, so they don't do more damage to pikemen. They do a little bit more damage to swordsmen and a lot more damage to archers. They're really fast, and they make enemy cavalry weaker. I'm really conflicted on where to put these guys. I was thinking straight away just D tier, because I never get these guys. But I think I should give them more of a chance. I don't think they're completely useless. In the early game, they're good at just running down, going into enemy buildings and attacking them, because cav damage does more damage to structures. And in fact, with forged blades, cavalry do more damage to structures, which is incredible. So having at least one of these units around just to weaken your opponents, it's okay. I'll put them at C tier. I don't personally like this unit. It also does poison damage. It already does 55 cavalry damage. That's going to kill most... Well, it's going to kill most enemies in 1 or 2 hits that are weak grade. And if it doesn't, then they're going to be dead, because they are actually quite squishy, as you'd imagine from spiders. And they actually take more damage from pikemen, which is... it makes sense. It's stupid, but it makes sense. Haradrim Lancers. D tier. They are... I have high hopes for these guys every time I use them. The only problem is they're on a tier 3 power. That's the only weakness. Your only basic cavalry is on a tier 3 power that costs 7 power points. That's the highest a tier 3 spell can cost. You have to go down the left side to get it, which is fine, because I always go down the left side of the tree, so I'm using this quite a bit. The only problem is, though, they can't sustain themselves after a charge. Their damage is the same as the spiders, but they're paper thin. They really are. They're the exact same Haradrim Lancer from Rise of the Witch King is their main weakness. They're a spammable unit turned from the vanilla to a unit you can only get for a power. And it doesn't quite fit the bill, unfortunately. The only problem is, though, the only other problem that comes with this power is, not is it only 7 power points, but it's with another power that is also really good. I can make this unit from any building straight away C tier, because it is a decent unit. If you can get them regularly, you can use them well. They're good, but the fact they're from a tier 3 building, a tier 3 power even, and they perform worse than the Easterlings do. They don't really have a place in Mordor's roster. I know I'm saying that yes, they're the only dedicated cavalry you can get, but again, you've got better things. I'll talk about the monsters shortly. And then Morgul Riders, amazing unit, a bit on the expensive side, but when they die at level 5, they can then turn themselves into Morgul Shadows, which is really good. And again, this is from Minas Morgul, so it is from the outpost I prefer. And it is also a very powerful cavalry unit. Not as strong as Knights of Dol Amroth, I'll grant you. They're not as strong as them, but let me show you exactly what their powers are, because this is something you need to be aware of. The Knights of Minas Morgul lose less momentum when they trample enemies that are already weakened by the presence of a ringed spirit. So again, this is going around with the Nazgul. Using Nazgul is really effective with the Morgul Riders. And then, oh, it's level 6, Eternal Slavery. The Knights of Minas Morgul will return as spirits of the Shadow World if they die. And also, they look so cool. Have you not loved that face? Yeah, their stats are really good. At level 1, 1,220 health. That's not as much as the Catalans or the Black Easterlings by a pretty big margin. But they are also cavalry. Keep that into mind as well. They're cavalry. So they can run around circles around everything else and do some pretty efficient damage at the same time. The only weaknesses is the fact that is your only real way of getting cavalry. It's limited, but it is also still really good. I'm going to put it at A tier. Not S tier, sadly. It doesn't hit the S tier bracket because it does have its weaknesses, as all cavalry do. Any pikeman unit that's hiding in the infantry clump is going to, unfortunately, do some pretty substantial damage, because revenge damage does hurt a lot. And then they get one hit in, and the Morgul Riders could be dead. And that's a lot of money to invest. And in fact, for the first Morgul Rider unit you get from Dol Guldur, it's technically costing you 4,000 because there's the extra 2,500 from building the building. But yeah, they're close to S tier. They make a unit that is S tier, so they're not far off. But yeah, same as the Castellans, they are your heroic tier units. Your best, the best of the best. But unlike Knights of Dol Amroth, which you can get more easily, and it's hard to say because the fact they benefit from being around the Nazgul, and if they are actually really good together. All 9 Nazgul on horses with the Morgul Knights probably make the second strongest cavalry force in the game. The first being, of course, Theoden and any Rohirrim around him. But yeah, they are a good unit. Don't get me wrong. I want to put them at S tier, but there's a few more things I'm going to put at S tier that I don't want this to feel like it's being put to the sideline on S. It's the top bracket on A tier. And that's the cavalry. So next we have our 4 monsters. We have Mountain Trolls. This unit, you may think does some kind of like crush damage, cavalry damage. Nope. It does water damage. Now, I don't specifically know what kind of things do water damage until today. Where the trolls do water damage, and that basically means whether they have armor or not, they're always going to hurt you a lot. And even heroes struggle with these trolls. These trolls, they're monsters. Literally. But also, with the influence of Sauron, you can give them armor, which doubles their health, by the way. I'm fairly certain. That's what the forum said. I got all this information from. Yep, doubles their health, and then you can get an upgrade. Either the sword that does extra damage to units, heroes, and monsters, the assault mace for extra AoE, or siege hammers for extra damage to structures. And then you also get an extra ability. 10 seconds to disable enemy buildings. For 10 seconds, your AoE damage is even greater. Oh, I already did the assault thing. The sword that does extra is a cripple strike, basically. Really good. So the mountain trolls have lots of versatility. And also, with their heavy armor, they take next to no damage to slash or pierce damage. They become nearly as busted as the fire drakes with heavy armor in Age of the Ring. They're definitely a tier unit. Plus, they can be discounted by getting slaughterhouses. So having them cost 800, not that big of a deal when you can reduce the cost by 30%. Now, drummer trolls. Their biggest problem is they're too fast. Because all your normal units move at a speed of 40. They move at a faster speed. They move at a speed of... Let me just find where I wrote all this down. They move at a speed of 60. Now, mountain trolls move at a speed of 70. But that's fine for them because they can use that to their advantage to go around different areas and crush things without getting killed by pikemen. Drummer trolls, however, if you don't pay attention, if you don't micro these trolls, then you're spending 1200 and losing out a decent unit, actually. Because they do give a boost to all of your units. Let's see if I actually had one alive. No, I didn't. Right, I ran out of command points. I'm just going to have my orcs eat each other. Just give me a second. So I can get some command points back. Now these orcs eat the other orcs, so we've already talked about them. Yeah, the poison, it doesn't... Even though it says can cause twice as much... And cause twice more damage than ordinary orcs, don't believe that. All that does is give a 3 damage tick every second. So for 10 seconds, that's 30 damage. It's not impressive enough, in my opinion. Let's get a drummer troll so we can show you off its abilities and get the troll catapult as well because I want to show and the werewolf. We'll get to them in due time. But yeah, Spartans, as you can see here, they have the Titan Cavalry have less speed and damage, but they also do poison, so that's okay for them. The Black Easterlings, like I mentioned, they have heavy crow beaks that deal extra damage to buildings. Black Orcs. The point of calling it Orc damage is just basically so you can differentiate it between slash damage. So heavy armor is your bitch. And you have barbed shots, reducing the strength of their attacks by 25%. And yeah, these halberds are equally effective in infantry, cavalry, and monsters. Really good unit. Drummer troll here. So the drummer troll has its trademark roar. So that's the unit fleeing in terror. I believe that is classified as a fear ability, so Mordor units are immune to it. But also have leadership. Nearby orcs, nearby units gain damage and armor and fear resistance. So, and there's also work on trolls. So, if you didn't have Doguldur, if you didn't have Minas Morgul and you went for Doguldur, you wanted fear resistance, you can get it from the drummer troll. And also the extra damage and armor. It does put you a cut above the rest. In an orc clump, this is like having an Eye of Sauron permanently on you, which is really good. Well, an old Eye of Sauron actually. I don't think this one gives... Yeah, this doesn't give any power or toughness like it used to. Any strength, any extra bonuses. It used to, but not anymore. Now it just makes things difficult for your opponents to get experience and such. Yeah, having the leadership of the drummer troll really does just give an extra boost. The only problem is though, like I said, let's put him next to this unit of orcs so you can see the speed difference. You see, the troll is already walking ahead, and if you don't put him constantly on guard stance and stop him from moving, he's just going to run ahead and hit something, and if he gets too close to any of pikes, he will die. He is really good at his job, but sadly he is not very smart, and he doesn't like to sit back and just play his drums. So I'm going to put him at B tier for that. And again, he also needs a tier 2 troll cage. And like the mountain troll, you can decrease the cost thanks to slaughterhouses, but he is still very expensive. Very expensive for an upgrade. That can take a while to get. Now, Gorfow's Werewolves. This takes a while to get, but the result is quite worth it. If you've played as Angmar, you will know about these werewolves, of their existence. Oh, pardon me. They are really good. Really efficient units. They have fat amount of health. A total of 5,000 to be exact. So that is the same, about the amount that the Mountain Troll has with the armour. And also, these werewolves can be reduced in cost with slaughterhouses too. In fact, let me show you. Yeah, currently 1,700. I keep getting my numbers wrong. Because we have a 15% cost decrease. We can go up to 30%. So he can cost these can cost 1,400. That's 600 we're saving. 600. That's incredible. And you can see 500 health. They're very fast. This is probably your best unit for being a cavalry unit. But unfortunately, these lone wolves don't work well alone. You want a horde of them. And their ability to devour, they can regenerate health by killing an infantry unit, an infantry guy, a single entity, similar to the Shade of the Wolf from Vanilla Rise of the Witch King. And it gains damage and movement speed. It's actually damage and armor in the forum, and they might have changed it, so it is now damage and movement. But still, that's really good. The only problem is you need level 10 Sauron and the power of past ages, or just find the ring. So unfortunately, he does fall short just because of his restrictions. A lot of the reasons why some of these guys are not higher is just because of their restrictions. That is some of the biggest problems about them. Now, the Mumakil. Oh. This guy lost his trample ability. It hurts a lot to have lost that. He has one of the, if not the, fattest health bars in the game at 11,250 HP and can deal with his basic attack 2,000 siege and water damage. So siege damage is for when dealing with structures. The water damage is against everything else. That's insane. 2,000 damage. Not much is going to live from that. Not much at all. Heroes would struggle to live from that even. So any scout hero, dead. Anything foolish enough to get too close that doesn't have heavy armor or good resistances is going to die. Biggest problem is though that it is very weak to pikemen. Have even a single unit of pikes near it and it will probably die. However, if the opponent has no pikemen, the Mumakil's trample, even though it may sound small at only 100 trample, no, that's the werewolf, sorry, at 250 trample, the thing with the Mumakil's trample is it doesn't knock down the enemies. Like cavalry, they trample, they knock enemies down to the ground so they can't trample them again until they get back up. The Mumakil just stomps over everything. And if something gets hit by it once, trample damage, it moves again. Gets hit again because it doesn't get knocked down. It's what makes the Mumakil's trample unique in its strength. And it's ridiculous. And also, massive attack range. The best way to kill this off is by using elemental attacks. Like fire, water, and obviously Pikemen is the best. But archers, not a chance unless you have fire arrows, or silver thorn arrows, or gold thorn arrows. Basically, any unupgraded archers are going to struggle. Swordsmen, you're going to struggle. Cavalry, you're going to struggle. And you can also put your archers into it. Black Orcs, you can put into there. Morgul archers. Orcs, Dogwaldor archers. You can put them all in there. And he's then a more walking lone tower. Which is really good. Sadly, though, he is in the same power as the Haradrim Riders. So he can't quite hit S tier, but he is going to hit A tier. He is really strong. These boys are really strong. You get one of them every time you use the power. You can decrease the timer on the power, as I've mentioned before. And unlike the Haradrim Riders, they won't die to one unit of pikemen. If you see the pikemen quick enough, you can stop it, because it does move quite slowly. Unlike the Haradrim, these guys, you can just move quite methodically. And if your opponent doesn't have anything to counter it, they are probably going to die if you use it properly. Now we come to siege. Ugh. Siege towers. Let's start with the most useless things. So, only good on castle maps. Only good on factions that have walls, which granted is most of them. They do have quite high resistances, but they don't do much. I never really liked siege towers or siege ladders in Battle for Middle-earth. I liked their concept. I liked how you could put units into them to move them up. I don't like, however, that some units just refuse to go up them, and a lot of Mordor's roster, you can't actually go in the siege tower, and it makes my brain hurt that it doesn't work like that. D tier. It doesn't have enough utility. Not a lot of stuff can go through it, and it's easy to just destroy the base anyway. Battering rams are actually decent. They're not as arrow resistant as Gondor's battering rams, but to be fair, most battering rams are quite archer resistant, unless they have upgraded arrows. But it's siege. I don't typically use siege. I don't endorse siege. I hate siege, so it's going to get C tier at best. The crapapults, as I like to call it. These catapults are... I'm not sure if it's unique. They say in the forum that it's unique, that they can do damage not just to a building, but also the unit garrisoning the building. So like a unit of elite archers protecting this powerful lone tower. Or actually no, a unit of Gondor archers in a lone tower. Gets hit once, the archers are dead. Like, yeah, that's cool. But how many times is that actually going to happen? I never put my units in towers. Not unless they're going to be safe. And crapapults can also use can also turn into using severed heads with Gothmog at level 7 to cause fear. I believe that can also make units retreat from towers. That might be a thing from Battle for Middle-earth 1 that they removed. But there's a better option than the crapapult. So it only gets C tier. The better option is perhaps the best ranged artillery in the game. The troll catapult. Now this is a catapult I endorse, because it requires you to have Sauron use his influence on the building. It costs a mammoth amount, 1,200, which you can decrease through building arsenals. But what's the point when you can be building tribute camps and be getting cool powers constantly used? So let's go over the actual stats of the troll catapult compared to the catapult. So firstly, their cost is 600 to 1,000. I got not 1,200, it's 1,000 for the troll catapult. A normal catapult has 1,200 HP, which is fine. Troll catapult 1,800 HP. HP doesn't make a difference. Both will die to anything, really. This is where it makes a difference. 690 siege damage for normal catapults. 1,840 siege damage for troll catapults. That is nearly 3 times as much damage. And then they also have an extra 100 range over the basic catapults. Troll catapults are actually S tier, just because they are stupidly good. Stupidly good. But it is worth getting them because you will see them shine. You will see them shine. They do almost as much damage as a Mumakil from a range that not even Galafrim with longbows can reach. 550 range is, I believe, the longest range you can get on a unit. Most siege units can only get to 450. Those can then be shot back by archers on the high ground. Maybe Galafrin with longbows on the high ground of a different fortress might be able to hit the troll catapults, but anything else, no. Troll catapults can hit from ranges that not even dwarf catapults can reach. And that is a guarantee. And now finally we have Grond. 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 Now Grond, he is locked behind your tier 4 power. And it's not the tier 4 power I normally go for first, because I love Gorthour. But Grond, if you like going for Grond, then you will love Grond every time you get in. If your opponent does not react to the chanting of Grond fast enough, they will find themselves with a giant hammer of the underworld striking them so fast and so hard that nothing will stop them. So, what exactly does Grond do? Well, he has the highest health pool in the game of 20,000. 20,000, that's insane amounts of health. And his resistances are no joke. He takes like only 1% damage from pierce damage. Any normal archers, no damage. Slash damage, no. Specialist is probably one of the most efficient way to deal damage to him. On top of siege damage. But even then, that's 20,000 health you have to go through. If Grond is on your doorstep and you haven't done any damage to him, you better have a big army, because he does 5,000 siege damage to whatever he hits. So there is very few things in the Edain mod. Well, there are very few buildings in the Edain mod that have more health than 5,000. And if they do, it's not going to take long for him to hit you once, and then something else can kill it off. Because he has very low range and very slow speed. He's probably the slowest entity in the game with the smallest range. All these basic orc units have range of, well, all our basic infantry units /10, a range of 10. Pikemen, range of 15. Archers, range of about 395. Siege, 400 and 500. But Grond only has a range of 5. So he needs to get his big fat head right next to the building, swing back, and hit. But then when he hits, that's an entire army worth of damage in one hit. And he also has archers with flaming shots shooting from the areas above the wolf's head. So he's also doing constant damage around him. It's about the same damage as basic orcs, if not a little. In fact, no. I believe they do the same amount of damage as the original battle towers with fire arrows. So good enough they could kill an orc with heavy armor in one hit. So about 400, 500 damage each hit. Although this is considering against enemy units, not buildings. The archers don't do much damage to buildings. But of course that's Grond's job. So whereas Grond getting the fact that he's a tier 4 power, you're getting S tier. How am I not going to give Grond the best tier? He's just so strong. The fact he costs 0 and only a tier 4 power to get him with a great siege works, it makes Grond good. It makes Grond really good. In the past, you had to spend stupid amounts of money to get Grond, and then he would just wreck face anyway. Why not make it so you can get him in the same about the same time period, but actually spend money on useful things? And that's what makes the Mumikil strong as well, because it is technically free. You just have to wait a long time to get another one. And yep, this is the end of the tier list. I hope you've all enjoyed. It took me a bit to get it all set up. Here we see at the low of the low are our summoned cavalry and the siege towers. Then we have some more siege, quite a few units from Dumbledore, just because I personally don't get enough use out of these units anymore. They just don't do enough. They don't quite cut the bill compared to the units from Minas Morgul. Basic Orc units are good. The Dumbledore Archers, they are good. The Dumbledore Archers are good. If they were from Minas Morgul, then they would definitely be up higher. Drummer Troll is okay. The Werewolf, if it didn't have so many restrictions, it'd be better. You could use it more. But I like the fact it's really restricted. A lot of Mordor's things are really restricted. Because, as I mentioned in the previous video, a lot of this requires Sauron. Morgul Shadows, you need Sauron. Troll Catapults, you need Sauron. Black Easterlings, you need Sauron. Kirfungal Orcs, you need Sauron. Yeah, a lot of things. Gorfow's Werewolves, you need Sauron. There is quite a bit you're missing out on if you don't get the best out of Mordor. Because there's so much diversity. It's beautiful. No other faction in the Edain Mod has this many units. Actually, there might be one, but that's only because of the different variations for their different units. But we'll go into that in the next one. I hope you've all enjoyed. I imagine many people are going to feel a bit controversial about this. I'm happy to accept any personal attacks from anyone who thinks I might be wrong. You're more than happy to tell me I'm wrong. But this is what I feel. Because a lot of Mordor is good. But also a lot of it is not worth getting. Or I just don't get it. Because there's just better things you can get at the same time. But anyway, my throat's about to die. So, see you everyone. Bye.